Well, let's take you back to one of our leading stories now and engage in this crucial conversation, the continuing power cuts and the state of Eskom. It's wreaking havoc in the economy and the people's lives. But what can be done to fix the power utility? Let's get some perspective now, and we speak to energy expert Ruse Moleshe, who talks to us from Centurion this morning. Ruse, good morning to you. Let's begin with the President's remarks this morning. I promise we're going to get to your proposed solutions, but let me start with what the President says, and I quote, "We will not be able to eliminate load shedding in the short term. This is the unfortunate reality of our situation." How important is this admission by the President himself, Ruse, as opposed to the empty promises and the timelines that have basically never been met?
Good morning, Tony. Good morning to the viewers as well. I think it's very critical that the President tells South Africans the real truth about the state of our Eskom as well as just power system in general. It's quite critical and it's long overdue.
However, the President makes a very important admission, and I call it an admission. You'll understand it in a moment. He says, again I quote, Ruse, that reducing the frequency and severity of load shedding by addressing power station breakdowns is government's immediate goal. Now, I'd like you to contrast that with what his energy minister said on Friday, when he said, and I quote again, "We have 20,000 megawatts that is standing idle. If power stations at Eskom were managed properly," he goes on to say, "Eskom would operate optimally." Do these two leaders not agree on one point, and that is that someone is not doing their job at Eskom, and therefore someone should be fired?
Tony, I think the issues at Eskom are in the three main areas that we should look at. One is the issue of leadership. Two is operations management and cost management. Three is a new capacity. Those are the three areas within which we can frame the discussion. When it comes to leadership itself, the fact that we have a board that is not fully capacitated and we have vacancies for such a serious institution that has so many problems, to me, is a challenge. And I think that the way we should be looking at this is to make sure that firstly the board is fully capacitated, all the vacancies are filled, the technical, financial, maybe even turnaround strategies should form part of that board, as well as middle management at Eskom. There are also vacancies there. The second one relating to operations, which you alluded to, the minister also alluded to, the coal-fired power fleet at Eskom is 85% of capacity in South Africa. That means that is very critical for our security of supply. So it's very important that whatever solution concentrates on operational matters that relate to the coal fleet. And there are a lot of issues there, both management and others, technical. From a management point of view, again, it's the skills, it's the management of, for instance, Eskom buying work and buying parts and not getting the actual deliverables for those. Those are management issues that Eskom should be on top of to make sure that part of that 20,000 megawatts that the minister is referring to at least is available. This is why it's so important, because you have now to use diesel capacity. We know with diesel costs and the issues that are happening in Russia, and the cost of diesel are very much strained in the system. They will come through in terms of the tariff that we will pay eventually. So it's very critical for the coal-fired fleet to be managed to an extent that at least some reliability is there. Management of and storage of spare parts is a standard practice that shouldn't be bugging Eskom to this extent. Yeah. Why is that so? So I agree to a certain extent that is critical to manage that fleet to be able to address these issues. Those are the low-hanging fruit that we can try to address in the short term. The third issue is new capacity. I understand that government is helping in that regard to make sure that we get the 1,000 megawatts that we need to have. It will help with the use of diesel, to reduce the use of diesel. Diesel should be for peaking power and for emergencies, not for us replacing baseload capacity.
All right. So let's pick up on new capacity. We're now talking about these proposals by people like yourself to say this is what could potentially get Eskom out of the load shedding trouble in the interim. Is renewable energy that solution at the moment?
In terms of new capacity, regional capacity is part of the solution. Some of the IPP, independent power producers that are generating for themselves, they are a solution. Renewable energy is a solution to an extent. There is a solution for decarbonization strategy that South Africa is following. It's also a solution in terms of, wind power can produce at peak hours at some point. But the capacity does not fully come in as well. It has to be backed by diesel. So to some extent, it's not a full solution without the coal fleet operating at a reasonable level.
Yeah. Where do you stand, Ruse, on this debate that says Eskom buying renewable energy from the independent power producers is, to use the COSATU spokesperson's words in the Sowetan this morning, it's a scam? He is of the view that Eskom should build its own internal renewable capacity instead of buying it from the independent renewable power producers, versus what another person says is renewable energy that ought to be created by independent power producers independent of Eskom. Eskom must not enter the equation, so that what? You create competition that will end up lowering the costs for you and me to buy electricity.
There are two options or three. One, Eskom could build their own renewable energy power coming from the so-called finance that they are supposed to get from the COP17, and I don't want to get into the details of that because that's a complex matter.
Yeah.
That's one. So they can repurpose the Komati-fired power plants, but they also are leasing the land with an option for independent power producers to build their own capacity, sell to wherever they want to sell, about 1,800 megawatts. They're making that available. So that's another option. The third option is that, which is a good option in my view, is that the private sector, using their own money, their own funds for their own generation, can generate power and leverage on their own balance sheets, which will help, because Eskom, has a huge debt and a huge debt burden. They have a liquidity issue. So when you have the private sector complementing, as well as some of the credible municipalities in terms of financials, all of those options coming in and supplementing Eskom is to help prop up Eskom without using Eskom resources. To me, that's a good solution as well. Whilst Eskom is bogged down with trying to assist with the current problems that they have.
Ruse, it is my fault. It's my fault. I asked this question clumsily. Let me refine it. Should Eskom be buying renewable energy from independent power producers or not?
It's a difficult question. But to be honest with you, I think with the restructuring of Eskom and breaking it down, there should be generation competition in the market. So these independent power producers using their own resources, their own balance sheet, and selling power to each other in the market would be a better solution.
I can't agree with you more on that. But then, let's take it long term then. Should we be dispensing with coal when the countries, the powerful countries that are agitating at the moment for all countries to let go of fossil fuels, I'm talking about coal, when they themselves, we are told, are busy buying coal from countries such as South Africa, because at the moment, their situation with Russia has forced some of these countries to reopen their coal plants. And I'm asking you this against the background that says we have 400 years of coal that is in our country at the moment. Should we let go of that resource, or is there a better way of actually using it without affecting the ozone layer?
Koli, if you asked me as an individual and a pragmatic consumer in South Africa, I would say no. But if you ask me as an expert in the sector, considering the constraints that we have with respect to the use of coal, both financial, in terms of building of any coal capacity, we need financial resources, and financial resources unfortunately come from powerful countries. So any new capacity would need to crowd in finance, and financiers are now making policies that says that they will not finance new coal. So whether we want to do it or not, we may have that constraint. Secondly, because we have, as a country, South Africa, we have taken the route that will go for decarbonization. We therefore would have to, at some point, transition from using gas, possibly nuclear, to replace some of the existing coal-fired power fleet. It is unfair, but I think it's the reality that we face. We also face constraints with Europe putting in border taxes for companies that sell to them or export to them because of the use of coal. So in the long run, we're going to have this issue. But we should not be rushed to decarbonize, because as I mentioned, our coal fleet is 85% right now of our capacity. And security of supply is important. We don't have other options at this point, so we should not be rushed to try and decarbonize. But we've committed at COP26 as South Africa that we will meet emissions at a particular level. So I don't think we can fully get away with saying just coal forever. Noting the hypocrisy that you mentioned from European countries.
Sure. Let's conclude the conversation, Ruse. And again, I'm still stuck on this coal question, given the reserves we have here. I just cannot believe the amounts when people, including the minister, says 400 years worth of coal supply in South Africa at the moment. So are you telling us that there is no clean way of using coal in order that it does not affect the atmosphere? And I'm asking you this question against the background of a conversation that I had in the studio with the Eskom CEO, Andre Director, who said, we've tried it, it's not working, we are not going to waste any more money attempting these trials.
There are options that are being investigated worldwide with respect to clean coal technologies, and they are working in certain countries. So that's an option that we have, because the strategy is to decommission. But the only challenge is that, as I say, whether or not we would have the resources to implement these coal-fired power plants, new ones. But that would be the challenge that we will face.
Ruse Moleshe, let me thank you very much for your time, and energy expert there, and she's going to beat me, I can tell you that, because her name is Ruse, not Ruse, Ruse Moleshe. Thank you very much for your time.